Welcome to Branching Out, Growing Together, the podcast that explores growth, sustainability, and new opportunities in farming. Join your host, Melanie Jones, as she shares stories and insights from farmers and innovators who are making a difference in agriculture today. And now, here's your host, Melanie Jones.
Welcome back to another episode of Branching Out, Growing Together. Today, my guest is Mr. Brad Russell of Chestnuts in the Ozarks. Brad, thanks for taking time out to join me here because it's a super busy time for chestnut farmers.
Thank you, Melanie. I'm excited that you asked me to come back. So looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. You are the first guest to come back for a second episode. And the reason is that I'm working really hard to expand branching out to inspire and motivate and encourage people that want to have their own little piece of land and do something with it, or they have some land and they're looking for ways to create new revenue streams. And your story right now is so ideal to inspire people. And so let's talk about it. You started your journey as an adult with earning a degree in computer information systems from college. And then you moved to Bentonville, Arkansas, and worked for one company your whole life. And I bet our listeners can guess what that company is. But a lot of things have changed in the last couple of months. And that's where I want to start. Tell us about your journey.
Yeah, and to highlight that my company, because there's credit here to this company that kind of got me where I'm at today, right? That company is Walmart. But yeah, just running into peers and friends along the way, they would look at me and say, "You've only worked with one company your entire life." But that is where my journey started, working with Walmart.
And so are you still at Walmart?
No, I am not. I think the last week, it happened fast. I was really hoping that, kind of the path that the farm was on, we could do this for another 2 to 3 years. But, doing both my work on the farm over the weekend and after Walmart hours for like 4 years, kind of where we're heading and scaling up with the farm, that decision had to be made, right? So I think me personally, I think towards the end of March or early April was when I left Walmart.
And how far was the drive from your home in Bentonville to your farm?
Yeah, so typically it's like an hour and 40 minutes. So, it was a little drive. So there's time there to kind of decompress in the vehicle and listen to some use Audible, listen to a lot of podcasts along the way to use, to take up some of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for people that are considering having a piece of land, it's generally not going to be right near your house. And we had a situation where we lived in Atlanta and we drove 6 to 7 hours to Western Kentucky before we relocated. So that's something to take into account. But was it worth it?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, at the time that we invested in 2007 in the property, Chestnuts I didn't even know what that was, right? Like most people, the song was probably what I knew at the time, roasting over an open fire. So it's, in 2007, land purchase and just trying to figure out where we wanted to go and what could I utilize it for. And learning that chestnuts actually thrive in the region here in the Ozarks, it was exciting because it's not your typical agricultural farmland. So they do extremely well here is what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And it was kind of I imagine a challenging decision to leave a career and that paycheck.
Yeah, most definitely. When you look at your W-2 at the end of the year, right, what you make, what you were making and realistically where you're heading, it was an extremely tough decision, right? So it's having to adapt with more sustainable and the frugal lifestyle.
Yeah, that's it right there, isn't it? Like you have everything and then you make this commitment to follow your dream and you might have to tighten the belt a little bit. But I know in our case, with my husband, we've found that it's just so worth it. Now, your wife, Sandy, was on the podcast previously, and she's a global leader at Walmart. Has she been supportive of you following your dream?
Most definitely. I don't know if any other spouse that was that was supportive along the way. I mean, she was pushing. It wasn't a conversation, where I had with her. There was concerns. She was definitely a champion or cheerleader to kind of see where, steer us in our family in the future where we could potentially take this.
Yeah. And in a lot of ways, it's such a teamwork, where like in my case, I still work for my main employer while my husband's doing the same thing as you are. And because it's not a super inexpensive farm to develop. So, bravo to spouses working together to really achieve their ultimate dream. Do you have any regrets?
No regrets.
Okay.
It's just adapting. I mean, change is hard on humans, right? I mean, even within our roles and our corporate jobs today, there was always change. But we went through so many of them in the course of 24 years. But something like this is, if there was a number greater than a 180, I would try to do that as kind of, what this is like. So it's adapting, and it's quite honestly been surreal. You look at as far as how time has advanced, the days fly by. You think of like a photography, that time lapse photography. It's like I wake up in the morning, and then next thing I know, it's dark.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. I think in the past, working in the corporate environment, there would be times where you're always busy, but then you're always looking at that clock, right? I don't do that. It's kind of what we're doing now. So it's not enough hours in the day. Sometimes I wish the days were longer, but then there's also that good time to be able to kind of pause and take a break when you need to.
Yes. So no regrets. And I think back to Bob Staley of Ohio Chestnuts was a guest, and he said that he had to put in one life sentence before he could become a farmer. And I think that's a little bit how you feel.
No, and that's exactly it, right? I think what you just said there, Bob, hit the nail on the head. It's where, farming without the bank, right, was able to kind of get us where we needed to go, had to do the time. So,
Yep.
a lot of us have that one life to live, and definitely fulfilling that dream.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So when you went to college and you received your degree, it was a technical degree. Did you always want to be in technology?
I can tell you the driving factor for that, right, is as a young adult, and probably where, our kids are at today, society is driven by money. Quite honestly, we want to make a lot of money. But what I try to do is teach the kids is find something that you like, that you love. Well, let me back that up. No, like find something that you love, because that's where you're going to spend the majority of your life, irregardless of the pay. But technology and computers was one that I liked. And then there was also really the deciding factor of, if you look at like forestry, a biologist, or a game warden, those were all things I considered. But then you looked at the pay, and that was the turnoff for me at my point of time of that age.
Yes. Yeah, that's understandable. So really for a number of years, you were solving technical problems. And if we kind of segue over to the farm, are you using those problem solving skills on your farm? Is it easy or hard or what?
Yeah, it's not a one-to-one if you think of technology and to be able to code and work through some of those kind of solutions in the tech industry. Farming is completely different. There is a lot of technology with farming today in ag tech, Um, the lens that I try to use today is minimum amount of touches. It's primarily just me right now, and there's a lot of work. So how do I take myself and figure out how to minimize the touches and do things as efficient as possible? It typically takes, you know, being able to execute on something for a period of time and then realizing, right, that, hey, this is not working. It's not efficient. What can I do next time to make it better?
Yes. Yeah, that's fantastic. I think it also takes a lot of bravery, not only just the idea of leaving a paycheck to do this, but all the things you have to encounter every day to be pretty brave. And I thought of one good story was you did a podcast at one point and you were sitting out in your truck right around Christmas, being brave to go do that podcast to help tell the story that you're so passionate about. And that's the level of dedication that has to come with making such a big jump. So bravo to you. And if you're a listener thinking about this, like there are people out there doing this, and we just encourage you to explore. And another thing, this was just something I was thinking about earlier, is Craig Clark was also a guest on the podcast, and he said, if I wanted to be a farmer, I wanted to become a soybean farmer in Nebraska, I couldn't afford to do that. I'd have to buy all this equipment, have all this massive land. The price, pressing down is so steep. But with chestnuts farming, it really is something that we can buy 50 or 100 acres, even less, and get involved in it. So that's what you're doing. And so if we kind of think about that, what are your goals and what is your end game goal?
Yeah. So that's still underway, seeing what's sustainable, for myself to be able to accomplish. But the immediate goals is what we're looking at on the farm is we're somewhere over a little over 2,000 trees today in our orchard. And then looking at kind of within the next 18 months, and it's realistic, is to have over 5,000 trees in the ground.
Yep.
That's where we want to be. I also include that diversity aspect of the different, you can use the word cultivars or seedlings of cultivars to incorporate into our orchard. But that's where I want kind of see where we're at with the orchard itself and where we want to go. As far as the potted trees, it's been a fantastic year. It's kind of a good and a bad problem to have. I mean, I quit taking pre-orders in early July. And if Melanie, you would have told me that, so Brad, you would have X amount of trees and you're going to, have your pre-orders done by July, I would have said, yeah, kind of just laughed. So that part has been extremely exciting. The trees seem to be getting a lot of recognition as far as, how fast they grow in a year. Versus, other growers. So there's something definitely here with, here in this area to be able to churn out a tree that's, anywhere from 7 to 9 feet tall. And it's not all those trees that reach that height, but that part's been exciting.
Yes, I agree. And I think that it just reflects on the interest level, not only for trees, we're in a similar situation as you, but also the chestnuts. And, we have to have the trees before we have the nuts. And so you see these people tapping in to want to populate their farms, and we're on a mission. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit to a subject that I know you love and is super important, and that is soil health. And so the question for you is, what is the role of organic matter in its contribution to our soil, and how does it help chestnut farmers?
Yeah, I mean, just at a 50,000 foot view, organic matter is water retention, right? So maybe just backing up in some of the practices that I started with at the time and didn't kind of know where I wanted to head. I mean, we get close to 50 inches of rainfall a year. If we can capture all that water in the soil, you can make it available during the drought times, the critical months of the year where the trees the moisture is needed to, to fill out that nut. But what I did with is, food plots or wildlife plots is kind of a rinse and repeat cycle. I would plant a spring crop. Just think of this as a cover crop uh, of species that goes in the spring, and then come back in with the fall crop. I was never taking anything from the soil, right? There was always that get what grew went back into the earth. So what did I see by doing that? If you look around, we've got a lot of rolling hills, so you can see the adjacent properties, and most of that is open pastures and cattle farmers with short rooting grasses like fescue. And when it gets hot, it looks like wintertime. But if you took a step back and looked at the plots that I had, everything was vibrant, bright green, and still growing. I think that's where I would like to see as far as our orchard go, right? Instead of doing the heavy irrigation, because water is a finite resource. I mean, if we think about, I guess in my childhood is when water was bottled and sold, it was pretty much unbelievable. You would see water being offered, but I mean, it's something today that, it's not always going to be there. The aquifers are getting lower, the output of water that they can produce. Wells are going dry. So that's what's exciting about, Amy Miller said this, really like the word low input. And that's what chestnut orchards are. So trying to harness and capture as much water as we can.
Yeah, that's great. Not to mention they're good for the planet in so many other ways as far as the trees. But so another leader around soil is Gabe Brown in his really good book, Dirt to Soil. He talks about the strong yields that can be achieved with limited rainfall, just like you said. Did his vision and his information kind of inspire you to be so passionate about this?
Yeah, and I mean, I've listened to that a couple of times. It's a very powerful book that he's put out, and actually listened to. I think he actually does the narration. I got it through down and listened to it through Audible. But he is also one that, he didn't have the background of a farming. He tells that whole story, and I think his book was definitely an inspiration. He's a well-known, say, public figure in the agriculture industry. But I mean, up there in North Dakota, they get high teens as an annual rainfall. So he's been successful building up organic matter. Every drop of rain that falls from the sky gets absorbed and gets stored. And he's this tremendous success from the stories throughout the book.
Yeah, I think in the coming years and centuries, this is just going to be a critical topic, and so many people just don't know too much about where their food comes from in general and what it takes to farm. And I know I love thinking about Amy Miller saying that even though she and her dad Greg both have PhDs, we don't have to have PhDs in farming to enter into this field. There's a lot of resources and knowledgeable people. I mean, I know we're offering consulting for marketing services, and you're available, aren't you? If someone has questions about how to manage their soil a little bit better, to provide some consulting services.
Yeah, most definitely. There's lots of tools that are out there that can be utilized. So one that's what's out there is through the USDA and the NRCS is soil web survey. So that's out there for people to use. It's not overly user friendly.
True.
But that's, it's something that I can help with. And don't try to use it from your phone, from a mobile experience. But it's one that, someone that can use to kind of get some of the descriptors, I guess, some attributes of their property and their soil classification.
Yeah. Well, I highly recommend that people reach out, and we'll share your information at the end here. But let's turn to now what we like to call the elephant in the room. And that is the discussion of Chinese chestnut trees versus, say, American, the different cultivars and seedlings of known cultivars and such. And you sell a lot of chestnut tree, seedling trees. We do as well. And so we know firsthand that people are asking us, like, what's the difference? What about the American chestnut? So tell us a little bit about this idea of native and non-native trees in the U.S., as specifically as it relates to chestnut trees.
Yeah, maybe just, I mean, I like to, I like to see at some point where we could remove the word Chinese and universally use them as just say chestnuts. But I know that's not realistic, right? There's families of chestnuts with the names that they have, like Castiana Bellissima is Chinese, and you've got the Dentia, which is the American. But, if you look at our agricultural model today, if we had to rely on feeding the American population with what was native, we wouldn't be here, right? So, I mean, some of the ones like peaches, not native to the United States, no one even would even have thought that. Apples, peanuts, I mean, the list goes on and on. But there are going to be those advocates for the group because, there is that willingness to bring back the American chestnuts. I think you've got two different swim lanes, right? You've got the American chestnuts and their restoration that people are wanting to do to get a blight-resistant variety. I'm hopeful that it's not GMO. And then you've got your culinary line, which is if you want to grow chestnuts in the United States, they have to be, well, on the eastern part of the United States, they need to be Chinese, right?
Right.
That's really kind of where we're at today. And if you think about, me personally as a consumer, I'm always the one that picks up the box to see where things are made, right? I love anything that's manufactured American. I like the native species. I do a lot of the native grasses and wildflowers, but it's reality. We have to lead with what works.
Yes. And then there's great interest for populations that are accustomed to eating chestnuts to know that they can get them right here. A lot of farms have you-pick operations. We opened our store to sell chestnuts the other day, and the orders are just piling in, and we haven't advertised or anything. And it just shows me that the demand is there. The supply isn't sufficient. I imagine that will turn in the next 10 years, but there's just such a wonderful opportunity for all of us to share this message of a food product that's fantastic, that can be grown in America, and it can let people move possibly from cities or have a piece of land where they're making money and just being fulfilled. That's really, really what kind of drives me.
Yeah. That part, Melanie, that you just hit on, like, for example, I was in the background, I had soil web survey up. If I go look at my parcel property, it says farmland classification, and what it reads is not prime farmland. This is the exciting part, right? Chestnuts do not need agricultural sites to be successful. They can grow in marginal and be successful in poor soil. So if you think about all the heavy inputs that go into the crops today, the water demands, the petroleum-based fertilizer, chestnuts allow this country to steer away from that. If we can get enough trees online, it's quite honestly, the industry is still young. It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. And also just think of a farm, say of corn, it's a pretty flat field, right? Chestnuts do awesome in rolling hills that is typically been reserved for maybe cattle or something. And so it allows us to find land that's not designated farmland at the highest price point.
Yep.
And so that's just another entry level for people that want to follow this path and this dream.
Exactly.
So are there any other things that you would just like to share with listeners about farming, about making the choice to move on from Walmart, even though it was a great employer for you for a long time, your family, any of that?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, there was obviously a lot of prayer that was involved in the decision-making process. So, first and foremost, we led with that. But then also, if there's listeners that are wanting to kind of get there, and farm without the bank, it's unfortunate, but there is time that one has to kind of put in if you're in a corporate job to be able to get there. And you can get there, and do both. It is extremely hard, but you're going to find out fast whether this is something that, that you like to do. So that part is, just analyze all your data points, where you're at financially, where you're at, with yourself and the family. Is that sustainable? Does it make sense? And fail fast. That's one of the things that we said at Walmart all the time. If you're going to do it, don't spend 5 or 10 years. Get it going, and you could do it at a small scale from a pilot perspective. If you're looking at implementing trees, well, they work on my property. That's what I essentially did. I didn't just plant thousands of trees overnight. Look to see how they were doing and say, hey, this is going to work. So that part has been exciting. And I would guess you would say this is kind of just backed into this. Didn't know where we were heading, but, God has kind of provided us that plan.
I think that's very typical. We talk to so many people, and they do just kind of step into it. But now more and more resources just like this, people like us coming online that can help. I'm going to throw a plug in here for our friend Joel Hubbard, CPA of Executive Money Managers. He has a growing chestnut operation, also been in the pine tree business, and he is a great resource for financial consultation for anyone that's just needing a second look on that. So you can reach out to me for more on that information. But I guess we'll call that a wrap. And last thing, Brad, is where can people find you? What's the best way to look you up?
Yeah, we have accounts on Instagram and Facebook. So if you want to see some pictures of our farm or just kind of follow our journey, it's out there. I try to at least post weekly. I try not to make it everything like chestnut tree, but there's so much that goes on in the farm. Social media kind of paints that picture that, this is easy. You see all the good stuff that's out there, but there's a lot of failures. Maybe I need to start posting more of those so it reflects that reality. We also have a website. So it's chestnutsintheozarks.com.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. Well, I think you better get back out in the orchards. And thank you again, Brad. And we'll look forward to sharing this with our listeners.
Sure. Thank you, Melanie. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Branching Out, Growing Together. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe for more inspiring stories and expert tips. Join us next time and keep branching.